he has thousands of other people to take out my unfinished books and to write. I too now have a studio in our home, and I drift between art, craft, writing, and the educational work in a creative flow. For the vision of Fred is creation and creativity. In the essay, The Function and Nature of Poetry, that inspired this book, Fred says, and I'll quote this of him, "Of all games that life has devised, the most meaningful and the most bound up with pain and leisure is creation. Of all the forms of human creation, the most complex and the one which absorbs all the attributes of humanity is poetry. It is like the earth, though. To see it shine at its most beautiful, we must go to the moon." So the task of this little book was to take you to the moon, so that when you look again at Fred's poetry, you would see the most beautiful shine. For the past 18 months, I've been entering Fred's poems into the computer. He's always written by hand in an upside-down, left-handed script, which I have learned to decipher. He has never made the transition to word processing, although his mastery of the typewriter was legendary. I believe he probably typed the original manuscripts himself for all the issues of the Fiddlehead over many years, and all the 307 books he published through Fiddlehead Books. I know I now have hundreds of poems in the data file. As I discussed the poems with Fred, I began to observe the forms that he was using and to ask him about the process of his own creativity. Although I had known that he wrote in various forms, such as sestina and haiku, I had not really come to appreciate the depths of his skill, the craft of the language, and the extraordinary intellectual and creative discipline required. Living in close proximity, I'm able to see the true genius of Fred with new eyes. Fred has called himself a traditionalist, and I really believe that we should not abandon the past totally in favor of an unformed present. Much modern poetry has become free verse, and the concept of form and rhyme is often looked at askance. When I read one of Fred's sestinas, an arcane and complex form used by Dante, I am struck by the way in which the form is rendered invisible, and what arises is usually a meditation on a thought or idea that winds around many perspectives without losing the core, sort of like the double helix of a DNA molecule. The reader does not need to know the structure of the form to appreciate the poetry. The reader probably doesn't even notice that there is an intricate scheme of repeated words. However, how many people are currently writing in forms of this complexity? All the time? I believe that when the reader does realize the architecture of Fred's poetry, it opens the space for appreciation even wider, like actually seeing the inside of a cathedral and its soaring heights after having only looked at a picture in a book. This is why I wanted to prepare this book. I felt that it would contribute to a greater understanding of Fred's poetry and of his vision, both of which I believe have much to offer to this age. At the end of the essay that completes this book, Fred says, and these are his words, "Therefore, if we behold only machines and stereotypes, we tend to become only machines and stereotypes, and to atrophy within those areas of our minds that exist to make us more. If we read true poems, however, and hence obtain multiple visions of reality, we are generated into feelings, actions, and imaginative ventures that are bound to make us and the society of which we are members more than we would otherwise have become. If poetry needs any social justification, apart from what it gives personally to its practitioners, this is it." This theme is underscored in his book Later in Chicago, in which in the title poem, Henry Adams at Chartres, he alludes to the seminal moment in which America and its inhabitants were offered an alternative God, this time not human, but a standardized machine. The composition of poetry can break the standardized machine and shatter stereotypes. As you will read in the essay, Fred offers us an antidote to the world of mass media and standardization. And I quote from him: "I would suggest that in a world of conformist advertising and pressures towards conformity, a poet ought to express primarily, for his own satisfaction and understanding, his personal reaction to experience, reinforced by all the knowledge at his disposal and put into forms and contexts which he has, after extensive trial and error, found best suited to his individual powers of expression. For poetry, by its very nature, is about the interface between individual creation and creation itself. It is the way by which we flow together with the divine." And I quote, "If the only person moved by the catalytic activity of the poem were the poet himself, I would still say that he is blessed in his creation, for he is a creator, one with all creators, since God and Adam, present at the first great naming of things, and carrying on a purpose for which it would not be too egotistical to suppose the